Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as Samantha's voice drifted through our kitchen window like poison gas. I was hunched under the hood of my beat-up Ford pickup at midnight, because that's what 45-year-old security installers do when their world starts cracking. We fix things that can actually be fixed. I like you, David, but I'm not in love with you anymore." Her voice was calm, measured, like she was discussing quarterly tax reports instead of torching our 18-year marriage. Through the thin walls of our modest East Coast home, I could hear her friends murmuring supportive nonsense about how brave she was being. Well, that's good, I thought, wiping my hands on an oil-stained rag. I've always admired courage in the face of emotional arson. I'd been installing security systems for 15 years, ever since my boxing career ended with a broken orbital bone and too much pride to stay down. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my days protecting other people's homes while mine was being burglarized from the inside. Samantha had always been the ambitious one. Started as a paralegal, clawed her way through night law school, and now commanded a glass-walled office downtown, where she defended corporate scumbags in $1,000 suits. I was proud of her, genuinely. But somewhere along the way, I'd become the embarrassing husband she kept in the background, the blue-collar anchor dragging down her upwardly mobile image. The kitchen light flicked off. Her friends were leaving, their designer heels clicking across our cheap linoleum like a countdown timer. I stayed hidden behind my truck until their Mercedes and BMWs disappeared into the night, then crept inside through the back door. Samantha was already upstairs, probably scrubbing off her makeup and planning tomorrow's wardrobe. Her phone lay forgotten on the kitchen counter, screen glowing with notifications. I shouldn't have looked. Any decent husband would have respected her privacy, grabbed a beer, and gone to bed. But I'd stopped feeling decent around the time I noticed her working late every night and coming home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. The text messages painted a picture uglier than anything I'd imagined. Miles. Last night was unreal. He'll never know. Samantha. I feel terrible but also alive for the first time in years. Miles. Don't feel terrible. You deserve to be happy. Samantha. David's a good man, but he's not exciting. You know? Miles. I knew that name. Miles Brennan, the flashy attorney from her firm who drove a Porsche and wore watches that cost more than my annual salary. I'd met him at office parties, where he'd shake my hand with the enthusiasm of someone touching roadkill while making jokes about manual labor and getting your hands dirty. I scrolled deeper, my stomach churning with each message. Hotel reservations, explicit photos, plans for weekend getaways, while I thought she was at legal conferences. And underneath it all, a thread of messages with her best friend Monica, dissecting every detail of my inadequacies. Monica, how's the home situation? Samantha, same. He fixed the garbage disposal yesterday and acted like he'd cured cancer. Monica's, LOL. Miles would just buy you a new house. Samantha, don't tempt me. I set the phone down carefully, my hands surprisingly steady. In the boxing ring, I'd learned that the worst hits were the ones you saw coming but couldn't avoid. This felt exactly like that, a slow-motion punch to the solar plexus that knocked all the air from my lungs. Our house had become a silent film, only with more passive aggression and less Chaplin. I walked through rooms we'd painted together, past photos of family vacations and anniversary dinners, feeling like a ghost haunting his own life. The next morning, Samantha acted normal. Coffee, quick kiss on the cheek, rushed goodbye as she headed to depositions that I now knew were probably hotel rooms. She'd gotten good at lying, I had to give her that. Professional-level deception. Working late again tonight, she called over her shoulder, not even bothering to make eye contact. Sure thing, sweetheart, I replied, my voice steady as concrete. I'll keep the home fires burning. After she left, I sat in my kitchen drinking gas station coffee and planning my next move. I'd spent years being the understanding husband, the supportive partner who never complained when she climbed the ladder, using my back as a stepping stone. But understanding only gets you so far when your wife is sharing intimate details of your marriage with her boyfriend and girlfriends like it's a Netflix series. I called in sick to work and spent the day doing reconnaissance. Following Samantha wasn't hard. She'd grown careless, confident in my supposed ignorance. She met Miles at Meridian, an upscale bar downtown where cocktails cost $20 and the waitresses looked like Instagram models. I parked across the street, and watched them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. They sat close, touching constantly, laughing at private jokes. Miles kept his hand on her thigh like he owned her, and she let him. When he kissed her neck, she closed her eyes and smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years. That's when I decided to introduce myself to their little romance. I waited until they went inside to use the restroom, then walked over to Miles' pristine Porsche. The key I carried for emergency lockouts worked perfectly on his driver's side door. One benefit of the security business. I popped his hood and disconnected his battery cables, then used my pocket knife to let the air out of all 4 tires. Finally, I took out my keys and carefully carved "Cheater" into the paint of his driver's side door. As I walked back to my truck, I noticed Mrs. Appleby from across the street standing in her window, watching me with obvious interest. I gave her a friendly wave. In a town this size, gossip traveled faster than bad news, and I was counting on it. My phone buzzed as I drove home. Unknown number. "Nice move, hero. Let's see how you like it when the tables turn." I stared at the message, feeling ice water in my veins. Someone had been watching me watch them. This wasn't just about Samantha and Miles anymore. There were other players in this game, and I was apparently the only one who didn't know the rules. But that was about to change. The anonymous text haunted me for 3 days. I'd traced the number, but it led to a burner phone purchased with cash. Professional-level paranoia, which meant either Miles was smarter than he looked, or someone else was pulling strings. Samantha came home Tuesday night with a story about Miles's car being vandalized. She was appropriately outraged, playing the concerned colleague perfectly, while I nodded sympathetically and offered to install a security camera in his parking garage. "That's sweet of you, honey," she said, patting my arm like I was a helpful golden retriever. "But Miles already has his own security people." Of course he did. Rich boys always had people to clean up their messes. Our daughter Jessica called that evening from college, and I could hear the strain in Samantha's voice as she tried to sound normal. Jess was 20, studying communications at a private school that cost more than my truck was worth, and she'd always been closer to her mother. Smart, ambitious, social media savvy, everything I wasn't. "Tell Dad I said hi," I heard Jess say through the phone. "Your father says hello back," Samantha replied, without asking if I had anything to add. That's when I realized I'd become invisible in my own family. Not just unwanted, completely irrelevant. Thursday brought the college alumni mixer at Jess's school. Samantha insisted we attend together, keeping up appearances for the other parents. I wore my one good suit, the same one I'd worn to our wedding, and tried to ignore how she cringed when I adjusted my tie. The event was held in the campus student center, all polished wood and brass fixtures that screamed old money. I recognized several parents from previous events: doctors, lawyers, business owners who made small talk about vacation homes and stock portfolios, while I smiled and nodded like a trained monkey. That's when Miles appeared. He glided through the crowd in a custom-tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, working the room like a politician. When he spotted us, his face lit up with predatory delight. "Sam! David!" He approached with arms outstretched, playing the role of friendly colleague. "So good to see you both." He hugged Samantha a beat too long, his hand lingering on her lower back. When he turned to me, his handshake was deliberately firm, a dominance display disguised as politeness. "How's the security business, Dave?" he asked, loud enough for nearby parents to hear. "Still crawling around in people's attics?" "Someone has to keep the honest people safe," I replied evenly. "It's dirty work, but somebody's got to do it." His smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Well, we all contribute in our own way, don't we?" The conversation continued with him dropping subtle insults wrapped in friendly concern. How was my back holding up with all that physical labor? Had I considered going back to school? Maybe Samantha could help me find something more suitable for a man my age. Samantha laughed at his joke. Jokes, touched his arm when she talked, and generally acted like I was the hired help who'd accidentally wandered into the grown-ups' party. Other parents began to notice, whispering behind their wine glasses about the attorney's husband, who clearly didn't belong. Then Miles made his mistake. "You know, Dave," he said, pulling out his phone, "I was just telling some colleagues about small-town life. Mind if I share something funny?" Before I could respond, he'd connected to the room's presentation system. My private text messages appeared on the large screen. Messages I'd sent to Samantha about feeling left out, about missing the woman I'd married, about trying harder to be the husband she deserved. The room fell silent. Parents stared at the screen, then at me, then at each other. My most vulnerable moments displayed like a PowerPoint presentation for their entertainment. "Oops," Miles said with mock innocence. "Wrong file." Ugh, I felt heat rising in my chest, the same fury that had gotten me in trouble in the boxing ring. But instead of swinging, I smiled. "No problem," I said, walking calmly to the front of the room. "Technology can be tricky. Mind if I add some context?" Ugh, I took the microphone before he could object. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw were private messages between a husband trying to save his marriage and a wife who's been cheating on him with the gentleman who just violated my privacy for your entertainment." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Samantha's face went white. Miles looked like he'd swallowed a live grenade. "I work with my hands," I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I install security cameras, fix locks, and help people protect what matters to them. It's honest work, even if it doesn't pay enough for custom suits or sports cars." I looked directly at Miles, who was frantically trying to disconnect his phone. But I've learned something in my line of work. The most dangerous threats usually come from people you trust. People who have access to your home, your family, your private thoughts. People who smile while they're robbing you blind. I handed the microphone back to the stunned event coordinator and walked out, leaving behind a room full of whispers and two people whose secret was now very public knowledge. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. "That was stupid. Now you've made it personal." I typed back. "It was already personal. Now it's war." The response came immediately. "You have no idea what you're up against." Maybe not, but I was about to find out. The fallout from the college incident spread through our social circle like wildfire. By Friday morning, everyone in town seemed to know about Samantha's affair. My phone rang constantly, some offering support, others fishing for gossip, most just wanting front row seats to the train wreck. Samantha didn't come home Thursday night. She texted around midnight, claiming she was staying at Monica's, but I knew better. Hotel records were easy enough to access when you installed security systems for half the establishments in town. I used Friday to do what I did best, gather intelligence. My first stop was Darren's bar, a dive called Murphy's that served the kind of clientele who paid in cash and minded their own business. Darren McKenzie had been my trainer back in my boxing days, a grizzled ex-fighter who'd opened the bar after taking too many hits to the head. He was also the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Heard you caused quite a scene last night," he said, sliding a beer across the scarred wooden bar. "News travels fast. Faster when it involves a cheating lawyer and her pretty boy boyfriend." He leaned against the bar, studying my face. "So what's your next move?" "Still working on that." "You want to win this thing?" Darren asked, his voice dropping low. "Don't swing wild, make 'em sweat, make it public, but be smart about it." I spent the afternoon making phone calls and pulling favors. The security business was built on relationships. Contractors, cops, hotel managers, guys who knew things. By evening, I had a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. Miles Brennan came from money, old New England family with connections in banking and politics. He'd been married twice before, both times to wealthy women who'd divorced him for infidelity. He lived in a rented penthouse downtown, drove leased cars, and had a reputation for seducing married women as a hobby. More interesting was what I learned about Monica Palmer, Samantha's supposed best friend. She ran a high-end PR firm, handled crisis management for politicians and celebrities, and had a history of manipulating situations to her advantage. She'd been divorced 3 times, each settlement more lucrative than the last. But the most intriguing detail came from a bartender at Meridian, who remembered Monica being there the night I'd vandalized Miles's car. She'd been watching from inside, taking photos with her phone, and had left immediately after I drove away. Monica was the one sending me threatening messages, but why? Saturday morning brought answers I wasn't expecting. I was installing a new security system for the Hendersons, a retired couple who lived near the lake, when Mrs. Henderson mentioned seeing Samantha and Monica at the grocery store. They seemed very close, she said with raised eyebrows, holding hands, whispering. I thought it was strange. Strange indeed. I finished the installation quickly and drove to Monica's house, a restored Victorian in the historic district that screamed money and taste. Her BMW was in the driveway next to Samantha's Honda. I parked down the street and waited. 2 hours later, they emerged together, and what I saw through my telephoto lens made everything click into place. They weren't just friends. The way Monica touched Samantha's face, the intimate kiss they shared before getting into separate cars. This wasn't about Miles at all. He was just cover, a convenient distraction while Monica seduced my wife. But why the elaborate charade? Why not just leave me for Monica directly? The answer came that evening, when I broke into Monica's home office.
Since when do you carry men's cologne to the gym?
It's my trainer's. He left it.
Your trainer keeps his cologne.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
I'm not proud of what I did, but desperate times call for flexible ethics. Monica's security system was basic, the kind of cheap setup that kept out casual burglars, but not someone who understood the technology. I waited until she left for her Saturday night yoga class, then let myself in through the back door. Her home office was a shrine to manipulation. Awards for PR campaigns, photos with politicians and celebrities, and a filing cabinet full of dirt on half the town's elite. But what I found in her desk drawer changed everything. A manila folder labeled David Chen Project contained photos of me going back months, pictures of my daily routine, my work schedule, even shots of me and Samantha together. There were printed emails between Monica and someone named MB, discussing the best way to destroy the target's marriage and reputation. At the bottom of the folder was a newspaper clipping from 7 years ago. Local charity embezzlement scandal rocks community. The article detailed how an anonymous tip had led to the arrest of a PR executive who'd been stealing from a children's cancer charity. The executive was Monica Palmer. I'd forgotten about that case until now. I'd been installing a security system at the charity's office when I'd noticed irregularities in their computer logs. Financial records being accessed at odd hours, files being copied to external drives. I'd reported it to the board, never knowing who got arrested as a result. Monica had been planning this revenge for 7 years. She'd befriended Samantha, gradually poisoned her against me, and orchestrated the affair with Miles as the perfect cover for her own seduction. The goal wasn't just to steal my wife, it was to destroy my life completely. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. Found something interesting, didn't you? Too bad you'll never get to use it. I looked up to find Monica standing in her office doorway. No longer the sophisticated PR executive, but something much more dangerous. "Hello, David," she said, her voice cold as winter. "I've been waiting for you to figure it out." Monica stepped into the room, closing the door behind her with deliberate calm. She'd traded her usual designer outfit for dark jeans and a black sweater, clothes that wouldn't show blood. My paranoid mind noted. 7 years, she said, settling into her desk chair like we were having a business meeting. That's how long I've been planning this moment. The charity embezzlement, I said, keeping my voice steady. You went to prison because of me, 18 months in minimum security. But who's counting? Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Do you know what happens to your reputation when you're convicted of stealing from cancer kids? Even after I served my time, even after I rebuilt my business, there were always whispers, always questions. She opened her laptop and turned it toward me. The screen showed a video file, titled David's Greatest Hits, security footage of me vandalizing Miles's car, breaking into her house, following Samantha to hotels. I've been documenting everything, Monica continued. Your descent into stalking, harassment, criminal behavior. Poor Samantha, trapped with an increasingly unstable husband who can't accept that she's found happiness elsewhere. With you. With me. She didn't deny it. Samantha needed someone who appreciated her intelligence, her ambition, someone who didn't make her feel guilty for wanting more than a blue-collar life in a dead-end town. So Miles was just a distraction. Miles is an idiot, but a useful one. He thinks he's seducing a married woman, never realizing he's just the opening act. Monica stood, moving to a filing cabinet. The real relationship is between Samantha and me. The real love story. She pulled out another folder, this one thick with documents, restraining order applications, divorce papers citing mental cruelty and stalking, a psychiatric evaluation recommending immediate intervention. She fanned the papers like playing cards. By Monday morning, you'll be served with so many legal documents, you'll need a forklift. Samantha won't go along with this. Samantha will do whatever I tell her to do. Monica's confidence was absolute. She's been doing it for 3 years now. The affair with Miles, the emotional distance from you, even the decision to humiliate you at that college event, all my suggestions. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every moment I'd felt invisible in my own marriage. Monica had been orchestrating all of it. You turned her against me. I showed her what she could have, what she deserved. Monica moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. A woman who understood her needs, someone who could match her intellectually, professionally, sexually. And all I had to do was disappear. Exactly. But you had to be stubborn, had to fight back, had to make this complicated. She shook her head with mock disappointment. Now, instead of a quiet divorce and a fresh start, we have to destroy you completely. My phone buzzed. Monica glanced at it and smiled. That'll be Samantha, wondering where you are. She's at Miles's place right now, establishing her alibi for tonight. What happens tonight? Tonight, you have a breakdown. You break into Miles's penthouse, threaten him with violence, maybe rough him up a little. The police arrive, anonymous tip, of course, and find you in the middle of a psychotic episode. Samantha has no choice but to have you committed for evaluation. She pulled a small device from her pocket, a voice recorder. I'll play them the threatening voicemails you've been leaving. The ones where you talk about hurting Miles, about making them pay for betraying you. She pressed play, and my own voice filled the room, slurred with rage and alcohol, making graphic threats I'd never spoken. Amazing what you can do with audio editing software these days. I felt the walls closing in, the trap snapping shut around me. Monica had thought of everything, planned for every contingency. She was going to destroy my life, steal my wife, and make it look like I'd done it to myself, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated what a desperate man with nothing left to lose was capable of. There's just one problem with your plan, I said, pulling out my own phone. What's that? You're not the only one who knows how to use recording equipment. I hit play on my phone's audio app. Monica's voice filled the room. The real relationship is between Samantha and me. I showed her what she could have. We have to destroy you completely. Her face went white. You recorded our conversation? I've been recording everything since I figured out you were behind the anonymous texts. Every confession, every threat, every detail of your little revenge plot. I held up the phone like a trophy. Amazing what you can do with modern technology. Monica lunged for the phone, but I was faster. Years of boxing had taught me to anticipate attacks, and she was just a middle-aged PR executive who thought manipulation was the same as physical confrontation. I grabbed her wrist, twisted gently but firmly, and she dropped to her knees with a cry of pain. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm as death. You're going to call Samantha and tell her the game is over. You're going to admit everything, the revenge plot, the manipulation, the fake affair with Miles, and then you're going to leave town and never contact my wife again. Or what? She gasped, cradling her wrist. Or I release this recording to everyone. Your clients, your business partners, the local news stations. I'll make sure everyone knows that Monica Palmer is a vindictive psychopath who spent 7 years plotting to destroy an innocent family. I helped her to her feet, almost gently. Your choice, quiet exit or public destruction. But either way, this ends tonight. Monica stared at me for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, she reached for her phone. Samantha, she said when the call connected. We need to talk. The confrontation with Monica had been satisfying, but I knew the real battle was just beginning. She'd called Samantha and confessed everything. The 7-year revenge plot, the manipulation, even their secret relationship. But Monica was a professional liar, and I couldn't trust her to stay beaten. I needed to end this permanently. Sunday morning brought the annual Riverside Block Party, a community event that drew half the town to the park by the lake. Local politicians gave speeches, businesses set up booths, and everyone pretended to be one big happy family while gossiping about their neighbors. Perfect venue for what I had planned. I arrived early, while volunteers were still setting up tables and stringing lights between the trees. The main stage faced a natural amphitheater, where hundreds of people would gather for the afternoon's entertainment. I found the sound technician, a kid named Tommy who'd installed security cameras for my company last summer. "Hey, Mr. Chen, what's up? Need a favor, Tommy. Think you could help me surprise my wife?" 20 minutes later, I had access to the sound system and a flash drive loaded with everything I needed. Monica's recorded confession, screenshots of her planning documents, even some of the more explicit text messages between her and Samantha. By noon, the park was packed. Families spread blankets on the grass, kids ran between food trucks, and the local jazz band played background music while politicians worked the crowd. I spotted Samantha near the bandstand, looking nervous and checking her phone constantly. Miles stood beside her, playing the supportive colleague, probably still clueless about his real role in Monica's scheme. Monica was nowhere to be seen. Smart woman. At 2 o'clock, Mayor Davidson took the stage to introduce the afternoon's speakers. I waited until he finished his opening remarks, then activated the wireless transmitter I'd connected to the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen," my voice boomed across the park. "Before we continue with today's festivities, I'd like to share something with the community." The crowd looked around, confused. Mayor Davidson squinted into the audience, trying to locate the source of the interruption. On stage, a volunteer was frantically checking the soundboard. "My name is David Chen, and many of you know me as the guy who installs your security systems. I'm also the husband who was publicly humiliated at our daughter's college event last week." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People pointed phones at the stage, already recording what promised to be either entertainment or disaster. "What you probably don't know is that my wife's affair was orchestrated by someone seeking revenge for a crime I helped expose 7 years ago. Someone who spent years manipulating my marriage, turning my wife against me, and planning to destroy my life." I could see Samantha pushing through the crowd, her face pale with panic. Miles followed, looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "I'd like you to hear something." Monica's voice filled the park, crystal clear through the professional sound system. 7 years. That's how long I've been planning this moment. Poor Samantha, trapped with an increasingly unstable husband. The real relationship is between Samantha and me. The crowd fell silent, hanging on every word. By the time the recording ended, you could have heard a pin drop in the grass. That's Monica Palmer, Riverside's premier PR executive and my wife's secret lover. She spent 7 years planning this elaborate revenge because I reported her embezzlement from a children's cancer charity. Now the crowd was buzzing with shocked whispers. Phones were everywhere, recording everything, already uploading to social media. "But here's the part that really gets me," I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the park. "She convinced my wife to betray our marriage, not for love, but for revenge. She turned Samantha into a weapon against me, and Samantha went along with it." I could see Samantha near the front of the crowd now, tears streaming down her face. Miles had disappeared entirely, probably realizing his reputation was about to become collateral damage. "So I want everyone to know the truth. My wife didn't leave me for another man. She left me for the woman who's been poisoning our marriage for years, and she did it willingly." I clicked off the transmitter and walked away from my hiding spot behind the equipment trailer. The crowd parted as I made my way toward the parking lot, some people applauding, others staring in shocked silence. Samantha intercepted me near the food trucks. "David, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I stopped walking, turned to face her. "Explain how you let Monica manipulate you into destroying our marriage. Explain how you humiliated me in public while playing victim. Explain how you threw away 18 years for a woman who was using you as a revenge fantasy." "I loved her," Samantha whispered. "I thought I loved her." "No," I said quietly. "You loved the idea of being someone else. Someone more sophisticated, more successful, more important than the wife of a security installer. Monica just showed you how to get there." People were gathering around us, phones still recording, eager for the next chapter of the drama. "I made mistakes," Samantha said, her voice breaking. "But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over." "Start over?" I almost laughed. "Samantha, you destroyed our marriage for a woman who was using you to hurt me. You let her turn you into something cruel and petty and dishonest. There's no coming back from that." I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. "Divorce papers. I filed them Friday morning. You can have the house, the car, whatever you want. I just want out, David." "Oh, and one more thing." I handed her a second envelope. "DNA results for Jessica." Turns out she's actually my daughter, despite what Monica probably told you. So you can stop using that as leverage too. Samantha stared at the envelope, then at me, then at the crowd of neighbors and friends who'd just heard every detail of her private life broadcast, like a public service announcement. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent wondering what I'd done wrong, how I'd failed as a husband. Sorry doesn't undo the humiliation, the betrayal, the lies." I looked around at the crowd, at the phones still recording, at the community that had just witnessed the complete destruction of my marriage and my wife's reputation. "They looked me in the eye and called me a villain," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I wore the title better than they ever wore their masks." I walked away then, leaving Samantha standing alone in the middle of the crowd, surrounded by the wreckage of the life Monica had convinced her to destroy. Behind me, I could hear the whispers starting, the gossip machine grinding into motion, the social death spiral that would follow her for years. Miles would probably leave town within a week, his reputation in ruins. Monica was already gone, her business destroyed by her own recorded confession, and Samantha would have to live with the consequences of letting someone else's revenge consume her marriage. As for me, I had a new life to build, free from the weight of other people's expectations and manipulations. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be honest. And after 18 years of living a lie, honest felt like victory.